Hello, story lovers. Tonight, we're diving into a tale of passion, secrets, and choices that could change everything. Hearts will be broken, love will be tested, and every twist will leave you on the edge of your seat. Comment below where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit like, subscribe. Share it with someone who loves a powerful love story. And tap the bell so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. Ready? Let's begin. The glass towers of Manhattan pierce the gray morning sky like monuments to ambition. Victoria Sterling gripped her delivery bike handlebars until her knuckles went white, weaving through traffic with the desperation of someone who couldn't afford to be late again. Cross Industries. Headquarters loomed before her. 47 floors of chrome and steel that seemed to mock her existence. At 26, Victoria had learned that the city devoured dreams, leaving behind only the stubborn and the broken. She checked her phone with shaking fingers. 11:47 a.m. The lunch order was due at noon. And her supervisor had made it clear that one more complaint would end her already precarious employment. The revolving door spun her into a lobby that belonged in a different universe. Marble floors stretched like frozen lakes. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across cream walls. And the soft murmur of wealth whispered secrets she would never understand. Victoria's faded delivery uniform felt like a scarlet letter against the opulent backdrop. "Delivery for Sebastian Cross," she announced to the receptionist, whose navy blazer probably cost more than Victoria's monthly rent. "Executive elevator. 47th floor," came the polished reply. The brass elevator doors gleamed like captured sunlight as Victoria ascended through layers of privilege. Her reflection stared back from the polished walls, showing tired brown eyes and dark hair escaping from its ponytail. She practiced her professional smile, the one that hid 3 jobs, student loans, and the constant fear of falling through society's cracks. The executive floor revealed itself like a secret kingdom. Rich hardwood stretched beneath Persian runners. Tasteful artwork lined the walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered views that made gods jealous. Victoria followed the hallway toward the corner office, her footsteps muffled by luxury. That's when chaos struck. A golden blur of fur and enthusiasm exploded around the corner, dragging a leash behind like a tail. The service dog bounded toward her with joyful abandon, completely oblivious to the destruction it was about to cause. "Duke, no?" A woman's voice echoed from somewhere behind. Victoria tried to sidestep, but the delivery bags threw off her balance. Her foot tangled in the trailing leash just as the dog pivoted. Time crystallized into slow motion as she felt herself falling. The bags of Thai food launching through the air like expensive confetti, instead of hitting the hardwood floor. She collided with something warm and solid. Strong arms wrapped around her, catching her mid-fall and pulling her against a chest that smelled of expensive cologne and morning coffee. Victoria looked up into the most devastating pair of green eyes she had ever seen. They were forest deep, framed by dark lashes, set in a face that belonged on magazine covers. The man holding her had dark hair touched with distinguished silver, cheekbones that could cut glass, and a jawline that made her forget how to breathe. For a heartbeat that lasted forever, neither moved. Victoria became hyper-aware of every sensation: the warmth of his hands on her back, the way his white dress shirt felt beneath her palms, where she had instinctively reached for stability, and the fact that his green eyes were studying her face with the same intensity she was studying his. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, though she made no move to escape his embrace. "Don't be," he replied, his voice deep and warm with amusement. "I can't remember the last time someone literally fell into my life." That's when they both noticed the carnage. Pad. Thai noodles decorated the pristine hallway like abstract art. Spring rolls scattered across the hardwood like edible confetti. Green curry had somehow painted the opposite wall in an impressive Jackson Pollock pattern. Victoria's face burned crimson as reality crashed over her. She had just destroyed the executive floor of Manhattan's most prestigious company while being held by a man who was undoubtedly about to have her arrested. "Oh God," she breathed, finally stepping back from his arms. "This is a disaster. I'm dead." my boss will kill me. Then your security will arrest my corpse." The stranger's lips curved into a smile that transformed his entire face. "Breathe. It's just food. The cleaning crew has dealt with worse. Just food?" Victoria gestured wildly at the destruction. "I've turned your hallway into a Thai restaurant explosion, and I still don't know where Mr. Cross's office is." The green-eyed stranger tilted his head, that amused smile growing wider. "What makes you think I'm not Mr. Cross?" Victoria's mouth fell open as her brain processed the expensive suit, the confident bearing, the way he commanded the space around him. "You're Sebastian Cross," she said, though it sounded more like a question. "Guilty as charged." He extended a hand that was both elegant and strong. "And you are?" "Victoria Sterling," she replied automatically, shaking his hand and immediately regretting how clammy her palm felt. "Professional food delivery disaster specialist?" Apparently, Sebastian laughed, a rich sound that seemed to fill the hallway with warmth. "Well, Victoria Sterling, in 32 years of living, no one has ever made quite such a memorable first impression." The woman who had been chasing Duke appeared around the corner, elegant in her 50s, wearing mortification like expensive perfume. "Mr. Cross, I am so incredibly sorry. Duke is usually perfect, but something spooked him. Accidents happen." Margaret, Sebastian assured her with genuine kindness. "Is everything all right?" As Margaret led Duke away, Victoria stared at Sebastian, trying to reconcile her image of a ruthless tech billionaire with this warm, understanding man who seemed more concerned about everyone's well-being than his ruined hallway. "It's your lunch," she said weakly, gesturing at the scattered remains. "I've completely destroyed your meal, and I don't have money to replace it, and my company will probably fire me. And I still owe them for food that's now wall art." Sebastian studied her face, noting the genuine distress in her brown eyes and the way she unconsciously twisted the delivery bag strap. There was something refreshingly real about her, so different from the calculated responses he encountered daily. "Tell me something." "Victoria," he said, loosening his tie and rolling up his sleeves. "Do you have another delivery after this?" "No, this was my last one. But I need to get back and explain what happened and probably clean out my locker." Sebastian nodded thoughtfully. He then did something that surprised them both. He knelt down and began picking up scattered spring rolls, placing them in a torn delivery bag. "What are you doing?" Victoria asked, immediately dropping to her knees to help. Cleaning up, he replied matter-of-factly, "This is partly Duke's fault, and I can't let you face this alone." Victoria stared at him in disbelief. "You're a billionaire, CEO crawling around picking up spring rolls." "I'm a person who believes in taking responsibility," he corrected gently. "And right now, I'm involved in this situation." They worked in comfortable silence, Victoria stealing glances at Sebastian as they cleaned. She noticed how his dark hair fell across his forehead when he leaned forward, how his expensive shirt stretched across broad shoulders as he reached for wayward broccoli. "You know," Sebastian said as they stood with their collection of food debris, "I wasn't really hungry anyway. I usually order lunch out of habit, then eat maybe half while working through meetings." Victoria looked skeptical. "You order $47 of Thai food as a habit?" Point taken. He smiled that transformative smile again. "But honestly, I was planning to eat alone while reviewing quarterly reports. This is actually much more interesting." His assistant appeared, composure faltering at seeing his immaculate boss holding food debris. "Mr. Cross, your 2 o'clock moved up. They're waiting in conference room A?" Sebastian nodded, then looked at Victoria with an unreadable expression. "David, please call Bangkok Garden for another order. Same items delivered to conference room A in 20 minutes. Put both orders on my personal account." After David left, Sebastian turned back to Victoria. "Walk with me to my office for a moment." Victoria followed him down the hallway, trying not to notice how perfectly his charcoal suit fit his tall frame. His corner office was exactly what she'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, massive mahogany desk, tasteful modern furniture. But what surprised her were the personal touches, family photos, charity event pictures showing him building homes and coaching youth basketball. A guitar in the corner, well-worn books scattered on a side table. "You play guitar?" she asked, nervous energy making her state the obvious. Badly, Sebastian admitted, moving to the windows. It's how I unwind after difficult days. Though I suspect the cleaning crew wishes I'd take up silent meditation instead. Victoria found herself smiling. I play piano. Also badly, according to my neighbors. Sebastian turned from the window, and Victoria felt that same electric awareness from the hallway. Something was happening between them, exciting and terrifying. Victoria, he said, his voice taking on a serious tone, I want to make you an offer. Her heart spiked. An offer? I have a charity gala Saturday night. Children's literacy, a cause very important to me. I need a date. Victoria blinked in confusion. I'm sorry, what? Sebastian moved closer, and Victoria caught another hint of his sophisticated cologne. I'm asking if you'd accompany me to the gala. As my guest? You want me to be your date? Me? The woman who just destroyed your hallway with Thai food? Especially because you're the woman who destroyed my hallway with Thai food, he replied, green eyes twinkling. You're genuine, Victoria? In my world, that's rarer than you might think. Victoria's mind reeled. I don't have anything to wear to a charity. Gala. That can be arranged. I don't know how to behave at fancy. Events? You know how to be yourself? Victoria looked into his earnest green eyes and felt something shift in her chest. Like a door opening she hadn't realized was closed. Can I ask you something? Anything. This isn't some elaborate revenge plan for the Thai food incident, is it? You're not going to humiliate me in front of your rich friends? Sebastian's expression grew serious. He stepped close enough that Victoria had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Victoria Sterling, he said, his voice low and sincere. I give you my word that I would never do anything to hurt or embarrass you. Ever. The intensity in his voice made Victoria's pulse quicken. There was something in his eyes that spoke of loneliness despite success and wealth, something that recognized the same quality in her own life. Okay, she heard herself saying. I'll go to your gala. Sebastian's smile was brilliant, transforming his handsome features into something that took her breath away. Saturday night, 7 o'clock. He pulled a business card from his jacket, writing on the back, This is my personal number. Call me Friday evening, and we'll work out details. Victoria took the card, her fingers brushing and sending sparks up her arm. She looked at the elegant script spelling out his name and title, then flipped it over to see his phone number in confident handwriting. As she prepared to leave, Sebastian caught her hand gently. Victoria, he said softly, thank you for what? Destroying your hallway? For saying yes, he replied simply. And for reminding me that the most interesting things in life are usually the ones we never see coming. Victoria left, Cross Industries in a daze, Sebastian's business card clutched in her hand. As she walked to her delivery bike, she couldn't shake the feeling that her entire life had just changed direction in 30 minutes. 47 floors above, Sebastian stood at his office window, watching her navigate through traffic, a smile on his face, and the strangest feeling that he'd just met. The woman who was going to turn his carefully ordered world completely upside down. And for the first time in years. That prospect didn't terrify him, it thrilled him. Friday evening arrived like a storm Victoria couldn't outrun. She paced her cramped apartment above the corner market, Sebastian's business card worn soft from her nervous handling. The conversation when she'd called had been surprisingly natural, his voice warm and reassuring through the phone. He'd arranged for a stylist to visit with gowns from an upscale boutique, a gesture that both thrilled and terrified her. You're going to wear a hole in the floor, her best friend? Riley Martinez observed from the couch. Still wearing her hospital scrubs after a 12-hour nursing shift. Despite her exhaustion, Riley's energy seemed boundless as she supervised the transformation process with barely contained excitement. I still can't believe this is happening, Victoria muttered, holding up a midnight blue gown against her reflection. 3 days ago I was delivering pad thai. And now I'm going to a charity gala with a billionaire. Believe it? Riley grinned. And stop second-guessing yourself. You deserve this. The stylist, Carmen, He'd brought 3 options that made Victoria's second-hand wardrobe look like children's dress-up clothes. The midnight blue was sophisticated and classic. The emerald green was bold and eye-catching. But it was the third dress that stole her breath. Deep burgundy silk seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, fabric flowing like liquid fire. The cut was elegant without being revealing, sophisticated without being stuffy. When Victoria slipped it on, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. "That's the one," Carmen said with professional satisfaction. "It brings out your eyes and complements your skin tone perfectly." Victoria stared at her reflection, seeing a woman she didn't quite recognize. The dress transformed her from struggling delivery driver to someone who might actually belong at Sebastian's side. The thought sent butterflies rioting through her stomach. Saturday evening descended on Manhattan like velvet curtains. Victoria stood before her bathroom mirror, hands trembling as she applied the last touch of lipstick Carmen had selected. The burgundy dress hugged her curves like it had been made for her body, and her dark hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. "You look incredible," Riley said from the doorway, her voice soft with genuine affection. "But more importantly, you look like yourself. Just the best version." The black town car arrived precisely at 7. Its driver professionally courteous as he helped her into leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly rent. As Manhattan blurred past the windows, Victoria tried to calm her racing heart by focusing on breathing exercises Riley had taught her from her nursing training. The Metropolitan Club rose before them like a palace from another era, its limestone facade glowing under warm spotlights. Red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance, photographers capturing arriving guests in flashes of silver light. Victoria's mouth went dry as she realized the magnitude of the world she was entering. "Ms. Sterling." The driver's gentle voice broke through her paralysis. "Mr. Cross is waiting just inside." Victoria stepped from the car on unsteady legs, the burgundy silk whispering around her ankles. The red carpet felt like walking across fire as photographers' flashes exploded around other arriving guests. She kept her head high, remembering her grandmother's advice about confidence. It's being the best accessory a woman could wear. Inside the club's grand foyer, crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across marble walls. The sound of elegant conversation and classical music drifted from the ballroom beyond. Victoria stood frozen, overwhelmed by the sheer opulence surrounding her. "You look absolutely breathtaking." Sebastian's voice behind her sent warmth flooding through her veins. She turned to find him approaching in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped from the pages of a fashion magazine. His green eyes held the same intensity she remembered, but now they were accompanied by something that looked suspiciously like awe. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life," Victoria admitted. Accepting his offered arm, "You belong here more than half the people in that ballroom," Sebastian said quietly, his voice carrying a conviction that made her believe him. "Because you're here for the right reasons." He led her through the receiving line, introducing her to board members and philanthropists whose names she recognized from newspaper headlines. Each person greeted her with polished courtesy, but Victoria caught the speculative glances, the subtle assessments of her unknown status in Sebastian's world. The ballroom took her breath away. Towering ceilings soared above round tables draped in cream silk, each centerpiece a masterpiece of white roses and flickering candles. A small orchestra played in one corner while waiters moved like dancers through the crowd, carrying champagne flutes and delicate hors d'oeuvres. "This is incredible," Victoria breathed, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "It's a means to an end," Sebastian replied, his eyes scanning the crowd with practiced assessment. "Every person in this room represents potential funding for literacy programs. The spectacle exists to open wallets." Victoria studied his profile, noting the slight tension around his eyes. "You don't enjoy this part of your work. I enjoy the results. Children getting books, teachers receiving resources, libraries staying open in underfunded communities." His smile was genuine but tired. The politics and performance required to achieve those results are necessary evils. Before Victoria could respond, a woman's voice cut through their conversation like a blade. "Sebastian, darling, You simply must introduce me to your mysterious companion." They turned to face a woman who belonged on magazine covers. Her platinum blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon. Her black designer gown probably costing more than Victoria's annual salary. But it was her pale blue eyes that made Victoria's skin crawl. Cold and calculating despite her perfect smile. "Isabella," Sebastian's voice carried careful neutrality. "Victoria Sterling. Meet Isabella Hartwell." "Isabella, Victoria." Isabella's handshake was brief and dismissive, her attention already returning to Sebastian. "I was hoping we might have a moment to discuss the Morrison merger privately. Daddy's quite interested in your thoughts on the overseas expansion. This isn't the appropriate venue for business discussions." Sebastian replied smoothly, his arm tightening protectively around Victoria's waist. Isabella's laugh was like crystal breaking. "Of course, how thoughtless of me." Her pale eyes fixed on Victoria with predatory interest. "And what do you do, dear? Are you in philanthropy as well?" Victoria felt the weight of everyone's attention, the subtle pause in nearby conversations as people waited for her answer. "I work in food service," she said, lifting her chin with defiant pride. How refreshing, Isabella's tone suggested it was anything but. "It's so important to support local businesses. Sebastian has always been drawn to charity cases." The words hit Victoria like a physical blow, their cruelty wrapped in cultured politeness. She felt heat rise in her cheeks, saw the knowing smiles of Isabella's companions, understood with crystal clarity that she had just been marked as an outsider. "If you'll excuse us." Sebastian's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "Victoria and I were just heading to our table." He guided her away from Isabella's group, his jaw tight with controlled anger. "Ignore her," he said, when they were out of earshot. "Isabella thinks her father's money gives her the right to judge everyone else's worth." "Maybe she has a point," Victoria said quietly, staring down at her champagne flute. "Maybe I am just a charity case to you." Sebastian stopped walking and turned to face her fully, his green eyes blazing. "Look at me, Victoria." When she reluctantly met his gaze, he continued, "You are the most genuine person in this room. You're here because I wanted to share this with someone who understands what really matters, and what really matters. Making a difference, caring about something bigger than yourself, having the courage to be real in a world that rewards pretense." His voice softened. "You have all of those qualities. Isabella has none of them." Victoria felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. But before she could respond, the evening's program began. The lights dimmed as a spotlight illuminated the stage, and Sebastian was called up to address the crowd. From her seat at the head table, Victoria watched him command the room with effortless authority. His speech about children's literacy was passionate and informed, touching on statistics that revealed the depth of his commitment to the cause. When he spoke about visiting schools in underserved communities, his voice carried an emotion that made Victoria's chest tight with unexpected feeling. "Education is the great equalizer," Sebastian concluded, his eyes finding Victoria's across the darkened ballroom. "It doesn't matter where you come from or what your last name is. Knowledge gives everyone the power to transform their circumstances." The applause was thunderous, but Victoria barely heard it. She was transfixed by the man on stage, seeing past the wealth and privilege to someone who genuinely cared about making the world better. As Sebastian returned to their table, Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't just physical attraction or the thrill of entering his glamorous world. She was falling for the man who picked up spring rolls from his office floor, who spoke about underprivileged children with tears in his voice, who made her feel like she belonged anywhere as long as she was beside him. The realization terrified her. "Dance with me," Sebastian said, extending his hand as the orchestra began a slow waltz. Victoria had never waltzed in her life, but somehow Sebastian's lead made her feel graceful. They moved together across the polished floor, her burgundy dress flowing around them like liquid silk. Other couples swayed nearby, but Victoria was aware only of Sebastian's hand on her waist, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. "Thank you," she said as the music slowed to an end. "For what?" "For making me feel like I belong here, like I belong with you." Sebastian's response was cut off by the sharp tap of heels approaching. Isabella appeared beside them, no longer bothering to maintain her facade of politeness. "Sebastian, I need to speak with you. Privately, it's urgent, Isabella. Whatever it is can wait until Monday." "No, it can't." Isabella's pale eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. "It's about your little charity case here. There are things you need to know before you embarrass yourself." Further, Victoria felt ice flood her veins as Isabella's smile turned predatory. Whatever she was about to reveal, Victoria knew with sickening certainty that it would destroy the perfect evening Sebastian had created for her and possibly destroy whatever was growing between them. Sebastian's expression turned to granite as he studied Isabella's triumphant smile. "Whatever you think you know, Isabella, this isn't the time or place." "Oh, but it is exactly the right time," Isabella purred, pulling out her phone with the precision of someone drawing a weapon. "You see, I did a little research on your mysterious date after our conversation earlier. The results were quite illuminating." Victoria felt the world tilt beneath her feet as Isabella's screen glowed between them like an accusation. Her mouth went dry as she recognized the images displayed there. Surveillance photos taken outside Cross Industries 3 days ago, showing her in heated conversation with a man whose face made her stomach drop. "Allow me to introduce Marcus Torres," Isabella announced with theatrical flair. "Investment analyst for Hartwell Financial, my father's company. And according to these very recent photographs, Victoria's secret boyfriend." "That's not what those pictures show," Victoria said desperately. But her voice sounded weak, even to her own ears. Isabella's laugh was like poisoned honey. "Really? Because they certainly look intimate to me. Especially this one. It's taken just 2 hours before your little accident across Industries." The final photo showed Marcus grabbing Victoria's arm as she tried to walk away from him, their faces close together in what could easily be mistaken for a lover's quarrel, rather than the confrontation it actually was. Sebastian's green eyes had gone cold as winter seas. "Explain this, Victoria." "I can explain, but not here." "Not like this." Victoria's voice cracked as she saw the doubt spreading across his features like poison. "How convenient," Isabella interjected smoothly. The poor little delivery girl suddenly loses her voice when caught in her web of lies. "Shut up, Isabella." Sebastian's voice carried lethal quiet, but his eyes never left Victoria's face. "I want to hear this from her." Victoria looked around the ballroom, suddenly hyper-aware of the curious stares, the whispered conversations, the way their drama was becoming evening entertainment for Manhattan's elite. The burgundy dress that had made her feel like a princess now felt like a costume in a play she didn't know she was performing. "Marcus is my ex-boyfriend," she said quietly, each word feeling like she was pulling glass from her throat, but not the way she's making it look. "An ex-boyfriend who works for our biggest competitor," Isabella added helpfully. "How wonderfully coincidental that he happened to be in your neighborhood just before you managed to literally fall into Sebastian's arms." Sebastian's jaw worked silently as pieces clicked together in his mind. Victoria could see him remembering details, her nervous behavior that first day, the way she'd seemed almost too eager to accept his invitation, the fact that she'd appeared in his life at exactly the moment when Cross Industries was locked in a hostile takeover battle with Hartwell Financial. "Sebastian?" "Please," Victoria whispered. "Let me explain properly. Somewhere private. I think you've explained enough," he said, his voice empty of all warmth. "The question isn't whether you know Marcus Torres. The question is what he promised you to get close to me. He didn't promise me anything. I haven't spoken to Marcus in 2 years until 3 days ago. And that conversation was about him finally paying me back money he owed from when we lived together." Isabella's eyes glittered with malicious delight. "Money? How much money, dear?" Victoria's silence stretched too long, and Isabella pounced like a predator, sensing weakness. "Let me guess. Exactly enough to cover your outstanding debts? Your overdue rent? Perhaps even enough left over for a new dress suitable for charity galas?" The accuracy of Isabella's assessment hit Victoria like a physical blow. Every word was true, but not in the way Isabella was presenting it. Marcus had indeed paid her back exactly enough to clear her debts, but it had been money legitimately owed. not payment for espionage. That's not how it happened, Victoria said desperately. Isn't it? Sebastian's voice had gone deadly quiet. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like an elaborate setup. The convenient accident, the innocent act, the way you just happened to redesign my security protocols after gaining access to my private office. Victoria's heart stopped. What security protocols? The ones you observed during our impromptu cleaning session. The ones that mysteriously failed during Hartwell Financial's attempted data breach yesterday. The accusation hit Victoria like a sledgehammer. She stared at Sebastian in horror, realizing that her presence in his office, her nervous observations of his workspace, had somehow been connected to corporate espionage she knew nothing about. I never told Marcus anything about your office. I wouldn't even know what to look for, wouldn't you? Isabella's voice dripped false sympathy. A struggling delivery girl, drowning in debt, suddenly presented with access to one of Manhattan's most powerful CEOs. The temptation must have been overwhelming. Stop, Victoria's voice cracked. Sebastian, you know me? You know, I would never do I. Sebastian's green eyes held no recognition of the woman he'd held in his arms, danced with, made feel beautiful. I know a story you told me. I know a performance you gave. But I don't know who Victoria Sterling really is. The words shattered something fundamental inside Victoria's chest. She watched the man she was falling in love with transform into a stranger, saw their magical evening dissolve into a nightmare, orchestrated by Isabella's calculated cruelty. You want to know who I really am? Victoria's voice found strength born of desperation. I'm someone who works 3 jobs to pay off student loans for a degree I'll never use. I'm someone who hasn't bought new clothes in 2 years because every penny goes to rent and groceries. I'm someone who is stupid enough to think that maybe, just maybe, someone like you could see past all of that too, who I am inside. Her voice broke on the final words, tears threatening to spill over despite her determination not to break down in front of Manhattan's social elite. But you're right, she continued, her voice gaining steadiness, even as her heart shattered. You don't know me. Because the real me would never fit into your world anyway. Tonight was just a beautiful dream. And now it's time to wake up. Victoria pulled the small evening purse Carmen had selected from her shoulder and placed it on their table. Inside was Sebastian's business card, worn soft from her nervous handling over the past 3 days. Thank you for the most beautiful evening of my life, she said formally, her composure cracking only slightly. And thank you for showing me exactly where I belong. She turned and walked toward the ballroom exit, her burgundy dress flowing behind her like liquid courage. The crowd parted before her, conversations dying as Manhattan's elite watched the drama unfold with the fascination reserved for Gladiator. Matches Sebastian stood frozen, watching Victoria retreat with her head held high and her shoulders straight despite the whispers that followed in her wake. Something inside his chest felt like it was tearing apart. But Isabella's evidence was right there on her phone. Impossible to ignore. You did the right thing, Isabella said softly, placing a manicured hand on his arm. She was using you, Sebastian. Daddy's investigators confirmed that Marcus Torres has been feeding information to someone inside Cross Industries for weeks. But Sebastian wasn't listening to Isabella anymore. He was watching Victoria disappear through the ballroom doors. Remembering the genuine distress in her eyes when she'd first destroyed his hallway, the way she'd knelt on expensive hardwood to clean up spring rolls, the tears in her voice when she'd spoken about children's literacy during their dance. His phone buzzed with an incoming message from his head of security. The text made his blood run cold. Data breach traced to Marcus Torres's access codes. He's been using his ex-girlfriend's food delivery routes to case target buildings. Subject appears unaware of boyfriend's activities. Recommend immediate questioning of Victoria Sterling as potential unknowing asset. Sebastian's hands shook as he read the message again. Victoria hadn't been a willing conspirator. She'd been a tool, manipulated by Marcus just as thoroughly as Sebastian had been manipulated by his own suspicious nature. He had just destroyed an innocent woman based on circumstantial evidence and Isabella's poisonous suggestions. Excuse me, he said quietly, pushing past Isabella without explanation. Sebastian ran through the Metropolitan Club's marble corridors, his expensive shoes sliding on polished floors as he desperately searched for Victoria. But by the time he reached the street, she was gone. Disappeared into Manhattan's neon-lit anonymity like she had never existed at all. 47 floors above the city. In his empty penthouse apartment, Sebastian Cross stood at his windows staring down at traffic patterns that looked like the neural networks of some vast, unknowable mind. His tuxedo jacket lay discarded on Italian leather furniture, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck like a noose. He had everything money could buy and nothing that money couldn't destroy. And somewhere in the city below, Victoria Sterling was learning the same lesson from the other side of the equation. Neither of them slept that night. Both staring at different views of the same merciless city. Both wondering how something so beautiful could become so broken so quickly. Marcus. Torres disappeared from New York the next morning, leaving behind only encrypted files and a forwarding address in the Cayman Islands. Isabella. Hartwell's father announced a hostile takeover bid for Cross Industries the following Tuesday. But Sebastian barely noticed any of it. He was too busy replaying every moment of his time with Victoria. Searching for signs of deception he was now certain didn't exist, and wondering if he would ever get the chance to tell her that he believed her, that he was falling in love with her, that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. 2 weeks passed like years. Victoria returned to her delivery routes with mechanical precision, navigating Manhattan's streets like a ghost haunting its former life. She avoided the Cross Industries building entirely, taking longer routes that added miles to her day but spared her the torture of memories painted in chrome and glass. Riley watched her best friend disappear piece by piece. Victoria's laughter replaced by hollow politeness. Her dreams replaced by the grim determination of pure survival. The burgundy dress hung in their shared closet like a museum piece from someone else's life. "You have to eat something," Riley said on a Thursday evening, sliding a plate of homemade pasta across their tiny kitchen table. "I'm not hungry." Victoria's voice had developed a quality that reminded Riley of patients who had given up fighting. "Bullshit. You're punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault." Victoria looked up with eyes that held too much knowledge. "Wasn't it? I let myself believe in a fairy tale. I thought someone like Sebastian Cross could actually want someone like me for reasons that had nothing to do with manipulation or charity. Maybe he did want you. Maybe Isabella set the whole thing up to destroy what you had. Then why hasn't he called? Why hasn't he tried to find me?" Victoria's voice cracked, despite her efforts to remain composed. "Because he got what Isabella wanted him to get. Doubt. And doubt is all it takes to kill something fragile." Riley was about to respond when Victoria's phone buzzed with an unknown number. Her heart lurched before a rational thought reminded her that Sebastian Cross would never call from an unlisted number. Victoria Sterling. The voice was crisp, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes. My name is David Kim, Sebastian Cross's executive assistant. Mr. Cross would like to meet with you tomorrow evening. Are you available?" Victoria's grip tightened on the phone until her knuckles went white. "I don't think that's a good idea. Miss Sterling." There have been significant developments regarding the situation at the charity gala. Information has come to light that Mr. Cross feels you deserve to know. What kind of information? The kind that's better discussed in person. The Riverside Cafe on Amsterdam Avenue. 7 p.m. tomorrow. Mr. Cross will be waiting in the back booth. The line went dead before Victoria could respond. She stared at her phone, heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird. "Who was that?" Riley asked, though Victoria's expression had already given her the answer. "Sebastian wants to meet tomorrow night. Are you going?" Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the familiar ache that had taken up permanent residence in her chest since that night at the Metropolitan Club. "I don't know if I can handle seeing him again. Maybe you don't have a choice. Maybe you need to hear what he has to say." The Riverside Cafe was exactly the kind of place Victoria would have chosen for a difficult conversation, dimly lit. Unpretentious, filled with the comfortable hum of people who minded their own business. She arrived 10 minutes early and claimed a table near the back, her hands shaking as she ordered coffee she didn't want. Sebastian appeared at exactly 7 p.m., and Victoria's breath caught despite all her mental preparation. He looked different than she remembered. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his usually perfect hair showed signs of stress-induced neglect, and his green eyes held shadows that suggested sleepless nights. "Thank you for coming," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. "Your assistant said you had information. I deserved to know." Sebastian studied her face, noting the careful way she held herself, the defensive walls she'd constructed in the 2 weeks since their last meeting. Marcus Torres was arrested this morning in Grand Cayman. Corporate espionage, money laundering, fraud. He's looking at 20 years if he doesn't cooperate. Victoria felt ice settle in her stomach. "What does that have to do with me?" "He's been using your delivery routes to case buildings for months, Victoria. Every time you made a delivery to a financial district building, he was gathering intelligence about security systems, personnel schedules, access points." The words hit her like physical blows. "He was using me. You were completely unaware. My security team confirmed that. But Isabella knew about Marcus's activities because her father's company was paying him for the information." Victoria's coffee cup rattled against its saucer as her hands began to shake. She orchestrated the whole thing at the gala. The photos were real, but taken out of context. The confrontation with Marcus outside my building wasn't romantic reconciliation. It was him trying to convince you to get him access to my private office, which I refused to do. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "Which you refused to do," Sebastian confirmed. "And when he realized you wouldn't cooperate willingly, he disappeared rather than risk exposure." Victoria absorbed this information like someone learning they'd survived a car accident they didn't know they'd been in. "Why are you telling me this?" Sebastian leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "Because I owe you an apology that no words can adequately express? Because I let my paranoia and past betrayals blind me to who you really are? Because I've spent 2 weeks realizing that I destroyed the most genuine connection I've ever had with another person." "Sebastian, I'm not finished." His voice carried the authority she remembered, but tempered with vulnerability that was new. "Isabella played me perfectly. She knew exactly which buttons to push, which insecurities to exploit. But that doesn't excuse what I did to you." Victoria felt tears threatening despite her determination to remain composed. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You made me feel like exactly what Isabella called me, a charity case. You were never a charity case to me, Victoria. You were the woman who made me remember what it felt like to be genuinely happy. You were the person who saw past my money and my power to something worth caring about." "Past tense," Victoria noted quietly. Sebastian reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "It doesn't have to be." "Yes, it does." Victoria's voice gained strength from somewhere deep inside. "Because even if I could forgive what happened at the gala, even if I could believe that your feelings for me were real, nothing has actually changed. Everything has changed. Isabella's father's takeover attempt failed when Marcus's arrest exposed their illegal activities. The SEC is investigating Hartwell Financial for corporate espionage. Isabella herself has been charged as an accessory. That's not what I mean." Victoria met his eyes with steady resolve. "I mean that you and I still come from different worlds. I'm still a delivery driver with student loans and secondhand clothes. You're still a billionaire who lives in a penthouse and travels by private jet. One magical evening doesn't bridge that gap." Sebastian felt something crack inside his chest. "So that's it? You won't even consider that we might have something worth fighting for?" "I considered it. For 2 weeks, I considered nothing else. But I can't live in your world, Sebastian. I proved that at the gala, and you can't live in mine. You don't know what I'm capable of giving up." Victoria smiled sadly, and the expression broke Sebastian's heart. "That's exactly the problem. I would never ask you to give up anything for me, because that's not love. That's sacrifice dressed up as romance. And it eventually turns into resentment." She stood up from the booth, gathering her purse and her dignity with practiced efficiency. Thank you for clearing my name. It means more than you know. But this is goodbye, Sebastian. Victoria, wait. I hope you find someone who fits into your world, she said softly. Someone who can stand beside you at charity galas and board meetings without feeling like they're playing dress-up. Someone who deserves the life you can offer. She walked out of the cafe without looking back. Leaving. Sebastian alone with his untouched coffee and the devastating realization that he had just lost the woman he'd loved twice in 2 weeks. Outside on Amsterdam Avenue, Victoria hailed a taxi with steady hands and gave the driver her address in a voice that didn't shake. But as the city lights blurred past the windows, she allowed herself to cry for the fairy tale that had never really been hers to begin with. 3 days later, Sebastian received a package with no return address. Inside was the burgundy dress she had worn to the gala, cleaned and pressed, wrapped in tissue paper like a shroud. Pinned to the fabric was a note in handwriting he had memorized. Thank you for the most beautiful evening of my life. Some dreams are worth having, even if they can't last forever. Sebastian held the dress against his chest in his empty penthouse, surrounded by everything money could buy and nothing that money could heal. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan pulsed with the lives of 8 million people. But he had never felt more alone. Victoria Sterling had just taught him the difference between winning and deserving to win, and he had learned. The lesson too late to matter, * 6 months later. Victoria Sterling stood in the doorway of her new classroom at Riverside Community Center, watching children finger paint with a kind of focused intensity that only came from pure joy. The after-school art program had grown from 12 students to 40 in just 4 months. Funded by an anonymous donor whose generosity had transformed the struggling community center into something magical. Ms. Victoria. Look. 8-year-old Maria held up a painting that exploded with sunshine colors and impossible flowers. It's my mama working in the garden. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Victoria knelt to Maria's eye level, admiring the way the little girl had captured not just her mother's image, but her spirit. Tell me about these colors you chose. As Maria chattered about yellow for happiness and red for love, Victoria felt the familiar warmth that had replaced the ache in her chest. Teaching art to children who had never held a paintbrush before reminded her why she had chosen education in the first place. Before budget cuts and bureaucracy had nearly killed her passion, the community center was a world away from Cross Industries, gleaming towers. Located in a neighborhood where corner bodegas and family restaurants created a tapestry of real life, Victoria had found the job through Riley's hospital connections, working with at-risk youth whose stories reminded her that struggle could create beauty instead of just surviving it. Victoria. Mrs. Chen, the center's director, appeared in the classroom doorway. There's someone here to see you. Victoria glanced up from Maria's painting, expecting to see a parent or perhaps a social worker. Instead, her breath caught as a familiar figure filled the doorway. Sebastian Cross stood there in jeans and a simple sweater, looking more like a graduate student than a billionaire, his green eyes holding the same uncertainty she remembered from their last meeting. Hello, Victoria. The children looked between them with the radar that kids possessed for adult drama. Sensing undercurrents they couldn't name, Victoria forced her voice to remain steady. Class, why don't you clean up your brushes? We'll finish these masterpieces next week, as the children dispersed with the organized chaos of an established routine. Victoria led Sebastian to a quiet corner of the classroom. Her hands trembled as she wiped paint from her fingers, buying time to process his unexpected appearance. What are you doing here, Sebastian? I wanted to see what you've built here. His eyes swept the classroom, taking in the explosion of children's artwork covering every available wall surface. The organized chaos of art supplies, the photographs of smiling faces engaged in creation. It's incredible. It's just an after-school program. It's 40 kids who didn't have access to art education 6 months ago. It's families who couldn't afford supplies getting everything they need for free. It's a waiting list of 200 children whose lives you're going to change. Victoria studied his face, noting the genuine admiration in his voice. How do you know about the waiting list? Sebastian's smile was soft and slightly guilty. Because I'm the anonymous donor who's been funding this program? The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She stared at him in shock, pieces clicking together in her mind. The mysteriously generous grant that had allowed them to expand so quickly, the high-quality supplies that kept appearing without explanation, the building renovations that had transformed the space into something magical. You're the one who's been paying for all of this. I told you once that education is the great equalizer. You showed me what that actually looks like in practice. Sebastian stepped closer, his voice dropping to the intimate tone she remembered from their dance at the gala. You're giving these children what Jennifer would have wanted them to have, what you deserved to have when you were their age. Victoria felt tears threatening despite her efforts to remain composed. Why didn't you tell me? Because you made it clear that you didn't want anything from my world. This way, the funding came through official channels. No strings attached, no personal connection. Just resources going where they could do the most good. Sebastian, I can't accept you already have. For 6 months, and look what you've accomplished. He gestured toward the walls covered in children's artwork, each piece a small explosion of creativity and hope. This is what love looks like when it has room to grow. The word love hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. Victoria stared into Sebastian's green eyes, seeing the same vulnerability she had glimpsed that first day when he'd caught her falling in his hallway. Why now? Why are you here now? Sebastian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a familiar piece of paper, worn soft from handling. Victoria recognized it immediately, one of Maria's earliest paintings. A simple house with stick figures holding hands under a giant rainbow. Maria gave this to me 3 weeks ago when I visited the center, Sebastian explained quietly. She said it was her family, but that there was room for more. People, if they needed somewhere to belong. Victoria's heart clenched as she looked. At the innocent artwork that had somehow become a metaphor for everything she'd been too afraid to hope for. An 8-year-old. Taught me something I should have learned 6 months ago, Sebastian continued. That belonging isn't about fitting into someone else's world. It's about creating a new world together. One that's big enough for both people to be themselves. Sebastian, I've spent 6 months trying to live without you. Victoria, I've thrown myself into work, traveled to 12 countries, dated women who fit perfectly into my world, and left me feeling completely empty. His voice cracked with emotion. Because none of them were you. None of them made me want to be better than I am. Victoria felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. We tried this already. We know how it ends. We tried it in my world, with my rules. Surrounded by people who had every reason to want us to fail. Sebastian stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell his familiar cologne mixed with something that was purely him. But this is your world, Victoria. Your rules. Your people who are cheering for you to succeed. It's not that simple, isn't it? Sebastian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers traced her cheek with the gentleness she remembered. I love you, Victoria Sterling. I love your passion for teaching these children, your fierce loyalty to your friends, the way you see beauty in places I never thought to look. I love that you made me pick up spring rolls from my office floor, and that you're brave enough to tell me when I'm wrong. Tears spilled down Victoria's cheeks despite her efforts to maintain composure. I love you too. That's what makes this so terrifying. Then let's be terrified together. Sebastian's smile was soft and hopeful. Let's build something new. Not your world or my world, but our world. One where billionaire CEOs fund community art programs and delivery drivers teach children to dream in colors. Victoria looked around the classroom that had become her sanctuary, at the evidence of what was possible when resources met passion, at the photographs of children whose lives had been transformed by access to creativity. Maybe Sebastian was right. Maybe they didn't have to choose between worlds. Maybe they could create something entirely new. The children would love having a volunteer art assistant, she said quietly, her heart hammering with the enormity of what she was suggesting. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to get paint under your fingernails and have 8-year-olds critique your artistic technique. Victoria's smile was tremulous, but real. The pay is terrible, the hours are long, you'll probably go home covered in finger paint and glue. Sebastian's answering smile was brilliant. It sounds perfect. He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When their lips met, Victoria felt something click into place inside her chest, like a door opening onto a room she hadn't known existed. The kiss was soft and full of promise, tasting of second chances and new beginnings. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "There's one condition," Victoria said against his lips. "Anything. No more charity galas. At least not for a while. I'm not ready for that world yet." Sebastian laughed, the sound filling the classroom with warmth. "How do you feel about community center fundraising dinners? Pizza and paper plates in the gymnasium? Those I can handle." 3 months later, Victoria Sterling and Sebastian Cross stood before 50 folding chairs in the Riverside Community Center Gymnasium, watching their students display artwork that told stories of hope and dreams and futures bright with possibility. Sebastian's expensive clothes had been replaced by jeans with permanent paint stains, and Victoria's second-hand sweaters now came from boutiques Sebastian insisted on visiting together. But more importantly, they had learned to create space for each other without losing themselves in the process. Sebastian brought resources and business expertise to Victoria's programs, while Victoria brought authenticity and community connection to Sebastian's philanthropy. Together, they were building something neither could have created alone. "Thank you," Victoria whispered as they watched Maria explain her latest painting to a crowd of admiring family members. "For what?" "For teaching me that fairy tales can come true if you're willing to rewrite the ending." Sebastian squeezed her hand, his green eyes reflecting the same contentment Victoria felt in her bones. "Thank you for teaching me that the best things in life aren't bought. They're built, one choice at a time, with people brave enough to believe in something better." Outside the gymnasium windows, Manhattan pulsed with its eternal rhythm of ambition and dreams. But inside, surrounded by children's laughter and the evidence of love made manifest through shared purpose, Victoria and Sebastian had found something rarer than wealth or success. They had found home in each other, and in doing so, had created a home for everyone whose life they touched. Some love stories end with wedding bells and happily ever after, but the best ones end with two people choosing each other every day, building something beautiful from the intersection of their separate strengths, proving that the most extraordinary magic happens when ordinary people decide to love fairly. Serve in the corner of the gymnasium, Maria's latest painting hung in a place of honor, 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. Surrounded by a house big enough for a whole community, at the bottom, in careful 8-year-old handwriting, she had written, "Love makes room for everyone, and for the first time in their lives." Both Victoria and Sebastian knew exactly what that meant. The end.